So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the FABEC Learning Seminar 2022. Finally, we were able to meet in person, at least for a certain number of people, and we are very glad for that. It's Kate, Andreas, and myself who will guide you through these 2 days. And we have an interesting agenda, I hope you have seen, with some very nice presentations. We will have some demo sessions available to look and feel what we invented over the time. And so let's start with this very nice event. As the timings for the presentations are quite short and we have to stick somehow to our program because of several reasons. So we will have then in the panel discussions possibilities for extended questions. And we try as well to, if whatever question we are not able to answer during this event of the 2 days, we will try then to find the answers after the event and present it with the questions and the answers via the website of FABEC, so that we don't lose any of the interesting questions, obviously.
Thank you very much, Chris, and welcome everybody. Welcome to all the organizations that are here, both FABEC and non-FABEC. We have the FABEC Training Task Force. We've got some people from the authorities as well who are with us, the NSA Training Task Force. We've got a number of training organizations and academies, both within ANSPs and outside ANSPs. So very, very welcome also to Gate, to Ingenav, who have managed to join us in person. And with that, without further ado, I would like to hand over to Andreas. Welcome, Andreas, the chair of the FABEC Training Task Force, who also works in MUAC as a lead on the training, and Laurent, who is the head of the ATM department at ENAC and chairman of the Eurocontrol ATT. So welcome, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, everybody. So there is no link between the chair function and the shape of the glasses. First of all, I wanted to precise. So, Andreas, you are the chairman of the FABEC TTF.
Sure.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Even if it occurs during the COVID period, hard time.
Yes.
So, as far as I remember, it is used to, this seminar was called FABEC Training Seminar, and it has changed to the FABEC Learning and Competency Seminar. So why is that?
First of all, thank you, Laurent. Thanks for the congratulations. Well spotted. That's true. Training usually is the entire framework. It's the organization. It's everything, a wide scope. I think it was time to focus on the learning, what the learner does, what the students do, what people do when they learn, and finally, what is being built. It's competences. So we thought training is replaced by learning and competence.
Okay. What do you expect from these 2 days of seminar?
I think the most we can expect that we have a good start into a hybrid meeting, a seminar that is new in its kind, and I believe personally in cooperation. Sharing thoughts, sharing knowledge and experience is the first step into cooperation. So this is what I expect from the seminar.
Okay, we cross fingers.
Thank you very much. Wish us luck. But Laurent, when you say it like this, you're chair of the ATT now. Congratulations for that.
Thank you.
It's since May. ATT has 2 T's. Have you thought about changing that?
No, because if I did candidate, it's not to change anything. I hate change, and I'm afraid of innovation. But more seriously, thank you for the question. We are currently working on the terms of reference with Eurocontrol, and this symbolic change has good chance to be on the list. Okay, you have maybe noticed that the Eurocontrol Training Institute, called JANST, has already changed to Eurocontrol Aviation Learning Center. So we are already in that direction.
Okay, that's good to know. And what is your expectation then for the next years?
In fact, it's not decided yet, but it's a good and positive thing. We've just sent a survey to all our members, a survey to identify fields of interest for our day-to-day training and learning concerns. So when we'll get a reasonable number of answers, then we'll try to build a kind of top 5 topic list. We'll also try to identify in our members spokes like you have in the training FABEC team, spokes that will help me to identify the appropriate speakers for the 2 coming years. In fact, the chairman function is a 2-year function. So I would like to have some people that will help me, partners, and then during these 2 coming years, we'll have at every ATT meeting the same topics with different speakers. Okay, so this is what we try to do in the coming years for ATT, but we try also to rebuild a kind of, you know very well what is the FABEC spirit, and I know it too, and I know it's quite positive, and after these 2 years where we couldn't meet in person, what we could see is that our ATT is more a group than a team. So I would like to rebuild, we'll try to rebuild this kind of network that will also exchange about our issues, training and learning issues. And of course, on top of that, we will always have the participation of EASA for regulation updates. So the traffic is back, the training needs too, and I think that's, as sometimes Chris says, it's a challenging period, so there are lots to do now.
Thank you very much.
So applause for the 2 guys.
Thank you.
So next will be a short keynote about challenges, technologies, innovations, and transformation topics, but I think in the center of the keynote will be people and people making the difference. I think we are all aware of that. Sometimes we lose a bit the contact to that if we look at all these technology developments that we are investing into, and I would like to hand over to Martin for that.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you very much for having me here to speak to you. What a great event. Now, why did I pick that topic? Because I'm a people person. My goal is really to develop and to strengthen interpersonal and leadership competences for all people within Skyguide, at least in my current role. And we all are aware of that our environment has changed and our world has changed, and it will change in the future. The times when it felt like a sailboat and the wind is in our favor, maybe it was never like that, but like sometimes it felt like that, are over. And I think it's more like this. It's a ride like this where we have to adapt, where we have to take sometimes a different route. New obstacles are ahead, you know, and there's change ahead of us. And not everybody is comfortable. And if you look at the guy on the left, he's not really comfortable. He's maybe even scared. He doesn't even want to be on that boat. And what does not help to have the best technology, the best boat. And what definitely also doesn't help to have the coolest driver or leader with sunglasses on, the only one who maybe knows the way where we are going. This is definitely not enough. So we need a certain framework for now and in the future to deal with the situations ahead of us. Oops, sorry, that was the wrong button. So the base of everything is trust. I think that is not really surprising, but trust is so valuable. It takes time, yeah? It needs to develop. It can also be very easily destroyed. But once trust is there, we can get through every crisis, through every pandemic. Hopefully there's not one coming ahead of us again, but it's valuable for everything. The other thing is, like if I find the right buttons, is purpose and passion. You know, we need to have purpose. And I know a lot of people always talk about it. I need purpose. But it's true. It's so important. What is our purpose? What's the purpose of our company? What is the purpose of our jobs? And when you have this purpose, this leads to passion. It leads to passion and identification. What is also key to deal with the future. And one thing is really important here, that never take passion or identification or professional pride for granted. Because the good people, if they don't have the proper framework, they will leave, for sure. The next thing, not surprising, leadership. Yeah, just having cool sunglasses, playing cool is not enough. We need the right leaders. We need people leaders. We need people that create the we, that put people first, that have emotional intelligence. And now I could go on for hours again, talking about what other skills you need, because it's a very important topic, and there are very important skills and competences needed for now and in the future. What else do we need? Not only as leaders, but in general, that we truly and actively listen to each other. And here what I really mean is truly and actively. Take the time and listen. I know a lot of companies like to bring consultants in and they tell you what to do and not to do. Listen to your people. Your people know the best what they need, what's going on. They have ideas. They are your consultants. But therefore you have to actively and truly listen to them. All that with empathy. Find out why the people do what they do, why they love doing the things what they do, yeah? What their fears are, how they feel, yeah? What they need in the future. I know it's not something that you can easily learn, but just like sometimes take the time and think about the others and like feel what they feel, and also they truly care about each other. Last but not least, the resilience. I think also that we've heard a lot in the last couple of years through the pandemic, but our mental and physical health is extremely important. The resilience, some people know how to deal it, some people know how to strengthen their resilience, some people do not know that. And we as a company, we have to be there for them as well and help them to strengthen the resilience. And I would like to end my short presentation with this quote, what I just recently read a book, and in that book it was the beginning. When we will make the same breakthroughs in the way we treat each other as we have made in technology, so when will we do that? I mean, honestly, I think there's still some improvement how we can treat each other. You know, take care of the people, because you need the people to get through a transformation, to deal with technology, and you need the people to deal with change. Thank you very much.
Now, Andreas, if you'd like to come up and talk to us a little bit about the scene that we're in and maybe some teasers on innovation.
Thank you very much. Allow me a couple of minutes to set the scene. Let's speak in a picture. It's easier because I haven't prepared a visual. A medal has two sides. On the front side, you see, unfortunately, the same thing as on the top left corner. The spiky ball, the pandemic restrictions, the volatile traffic, the experience we gained, and the assurance about the need for effective resource management. At the very bottom edge is a forecast that says 90% of traffic back by the end of 2022. We are almost there. So we know, and we knew we had to be prepared, or we have to be prepared for what is next. The backside of the medal is, or can be perceived as a catalyst, because we did a lot in the technological area. A lot was done in the unmanned aircraft sector. We did develop new techniques, which in turn brings us to new skills and competences, new HMI, and different surveillance tools for the unmanned aircraft sector, for example. So what I expect here from the seminar, and I said it before when I talked to Laurent, is let's share. Let's share the experience. Let's discuss in the panel discussions what is brought up and develop our own new mindset about what is possible and what can be learned from the situation. situation. That brings me, to a nice picture as well, we can be happy that we learned something. That is not in sequence, obviously. First glitch. Where's the glitch wall? I need my another presentation, maybe. The people can change, but I can start already while this is changing. So, I sometimes have key moments in my life. I'm a gadget-oriented person. I really like technology, but having said this, there always needs to be a balance. So a key moment, what is it in practice? The introduction of the iPhone. We know that this was a key moment, and today nobody can live without a mobile phone. It doesn't need the Apple iPhone. Another key moment could be the electric car, Tesla, bringing an electric car to life, really something you can drive. Another key moment, a smaller one, I just had recently, sitting on the couch, watching the news. It wasn't an advertisement, it was the news. And it was a German car brand, doesn't really matter, but it was a car introduced by Mercedes, the Mercedes EQS. Oh, another electric car, it's interesting. No, it's an electric car with an automation level 3. So, thank you. So that means the driver is allowed to read the newspaper in front of the steering wheel. The only obligation is that you are capable of taking over the control within 10 seconds, putting away the newspaper, put the steering wheel into your hands and continue driving, looking around. What could it mean for us in 2025 or 2030 to have new technology that is capable of doing something like this? I'm giving you a teaser here about future training. It's a vision. It's a vision of Eurocontrol Maastricht. And in order to allow you, together with me, to dive into the topic, I'd like to show you a small video. There's no sound. Shall I restart again? Thank you.
Training means exposure and identification of your needs. Everybody is training or learning at his own pace. We have a vision of machine-based, individual learning. By no means human-human interaction will be replaced. When students are exposed to a learning situation, machines will record, analyze, and finally be able to support in the next individually required steps. While the student is exposed to the situation, trainers could flag certain moments in order to let the machine prepare the debriefing already. Over time, learning patterns could be analyzed, and mitigations could be generated with just a single click. A debriefing station with a highly intuitive human-machine interface would provide a dashboard, the flagged situation, and could allow to focus on teaching and learning. Finally, the student could redo the situation or exercise, or could undergo dedicated training to overcome shortcomings. This way we will be able to deliver what is needed to each student. Students can be provided with more or less content in the training facility, at home, or in study groups to meet their specific needs. We believe that we are setting a milestone in the training of air traffic controllers and breaking with the traditional way of training.
suppose in its function as a teaser, it's maybe exaggerating things. And it's a vision. A vision that is just partially a vision or a dream. And partially means that we are capable already and have tools to go that path. One thing that you could grab was individual training. We think by continuing the learning loop, the training loop, we continue in a path of individual training. Again, there needs to be a balance. Machines will only be able, in the next step, to support, to do the things in addition to what people, coaches do in the training. We think some ingredients to make this possible are required. We need to, when it comes to the remote platforms, we need to have exercises that are adaptable. Occupancy, complexity, that needs to be dynamic. We think that in order to support coaches, we need to have the machine doing an assessment. We call it scoring. And in addition, that was the single mouse click action that allows us to have another exercise. We call it recipe-based exercise creation. So you have, like a cook, a recipe. You think about flows, complexity, occupancy. You put everything together, click the mouse, and then you have something. In addition to that, there are the known suspects. Automatic speech recognition to make it more flexible. We said it's even outside the training facilities. Full recording means that the machine can analyze something and that the coach can use something afterwards for the debriefing. And in order to have it as flexible as possible, it should be as well possible to have a remote facility or remote capability, 24/7 ideally. We shouldn't be limited to office times or usual training times. Students might want to have a learning exercise at a different time. I don't know who, you're laughing, most probably the ones who are working as coach or had worked as coach know these kind of pictures. The most important is the left to check the pen, and then you try to explain a situation. It works, of course, I did the same. But you can do more. And this is what I'm talking about. The machine could help us to show and visualize even more how the situation with the fraction, the Air France and the Lufthansa looked like, and why the turn was important. So what we can do already is, while we have the full learning event, I like to speak in loops. So the first loop is that we have an exposure, which is practicing. You are exposed to a situation. It's not limited to operations. It can be in any stage of training, theoretically. And this is recorded. Okay. The next is that we do debriefing. We usually do this. And now we add something where we are able to manipulate the situation in order to achieve a learning experience. I will come to that in a minute. Finally, we need to document. So the circle can only be closed if there is an interaction of the technology and the human being. The trainee needs to be exposed to the traffic. The coach then can take the support from the machine, the scoring, a pattern recognition. Let's assume there's a proper documentation done in support or supported by a machine. And the machine is able to identify a pattern, a trend. What happened last time? What happened this time? You have change in coaches. How do coaches do the handover? This is quite important. Many of us introduce electronic debriefing systems to have this overview. What about a machine being able to give even more information, not only the actual current information about the last exercise or the last exposure? The recording for the debriefing, okay. And finally, again, the recipe to overcome that, to have something very specific for the student. I like to put this into the next circle just to explain. You see the exposure, you see the debriefing, you see the individual training. But stop. Currently, we are not there. Many of us close the loop from the debriefing back to the exposure. Go to another debriefing, go to an exposure. We like to continue this path with the help, support of technology to have an individual learning experience. Let's go back to the past first. Oh, obviously wrong picture. This is not how the past looks like. But sorry for that. We have something we call debriefulator. Don't ask me where the name comes from, but it's quite useful. If you think, and by the way, this is used in operations. If you think it's future music, it's not, we have it. What you see here is the possibility for a coach to show the path of an aircraft, how it was handled in operations, live traffic, and 3 alternatives. So the coach is able to show the alternatives. What would have happened if you turned left by 5 degrees? Or giving other different instructions like rate of climb, rate of descent, a heading, or speed. So you could really show and visualize a new situation. It's a very small tool, but can be very effective. Not to have just a piece of paper, scratching it out, drawing a new paper. The second thing, here I just share my experience and our development we did during the last 2 years. Exercise creation. We have a new editor that allows us to come from 1.5 days exercise creation to a maximum of 2-3 hours, depending on complexity, for a single exercise to be ready to be delivered. For our dream, for the vision, that's still too long. It should be in seconds. But what we can do is we can take the traffic flows that are happening or flying through our airspace. We can select the things that we need. We have already the first step of this recipe-based training, where we can select flows, the complexity, and finally, when it comes to complexity, we can measure that and we can put this into the learning curve. We did a lot of groundwork to identify the learning curve, to say this should happen at this point in training. And now the machine can help us with the exercise we created, saying, are we at that moment where the student is? Still not fully developed, but to be continued. Remote simulator, I think many of us worked on a remote simulator, have a facility that is capable nowadays, or are switching to a new software, a new provider that is able to deliver such a remote capability. I'm just showing the radar screen because what we have is the system. We have our online system that can be used as a simulator. We have the same functionality. This is why we can and continued throughout the COVID period with a remote simulator. What still needs to be developed, and we initiated already the projects, is the scoring, the pattern recognition, this recording, even in the simulator and ops, to have it very dynamic and to save storage. And this recipe-based exercise creation, although parts of it are already there. When we list all the tools and all the small things that are currently developed, then it would look like this. We have something for creating exercises, to store these in a database, to put it into a training event plan-like format. We have our facilities, of course the simulator on site and remote. We have tools in the simulator like text-to-speech, and when it says text-to-speech, is the simulator speaking. So a voice feedback from a virtual pilot. Voice recognition, that the student is able to give an instruction and the machine is executing and understanding the instruction. Recording. And Argos, I haven't mentioned, this is a project where we think about automation. We have it in the second version of a trial, which will be linked to the simulator. Scoring, the debriefulator, and CBUS is the documentation, the competency-based assessment system, digital debriefing system. Recipe-based exercise creation. Let's put all this, sorry for the lengthy explanation, but let's put all this into a circle in a minute, I'd just like to show this is the interaction from a student perspective. And there's interaction, and this is different from a coach perspective. Again, what always needs to happen is the coach interacting with the student. What do you need? The things you cannot assess, okay, that can currently not be assessed by a machine. The coach has to decide about the proper action, about how many exercises, about the timing, and these kind of things. Let's put these things into the loop again, and now you see how we like to do this. We like to give exposure either remotely or on site. We like to record this. We like to take the new technology of automation to identify the delta between the ideal path and what the student did. We like to have the machine supporting this with a scoring, with an assessment of the situation, already preparing something into the debriefulator, this flagged situation that was marked in the teaser, and finally can be pulled out by the coach immediately in seconds, where you say, this is the situation, and this is the situation. I like to talk about this. And finally, you have a nice HMI that allows you to say, okay, we had up to a loss of separation, that shouldn't happen, but maybe it's just situational awareness, and then let's find the root cause for that. So that should be possible. And now, because of this, I make you 3 or 4 exercises. Here they are, and for the next 2 days, you go into a facility, do the training, you are assessed again, and we see each other and assess your situation. What we do in summer 22, going back into the present, is that we introduce already in the simulator a so-called part task training that we, and this is more for the transition, that we do a certain kind of drill training for the things we identified that at a later stage, so let's say we are pre-ops or operational training, that we identified that should have been done earlier, better, more deeply, that is delivered to the students in part task training. And finally, self-learning. We will start within our training setup with self-learning. Daily, it's 3 runs as a coached simulator session, 1 run with a part task training, and 1 run with a self-learning. And this is the daily program that will run as of end of July 2022. Allow me to dream the Tesla key event thingy. What if we have something like in gaming industry? And now I'm coming back to Mercedes. Mercedes introduced a deep alliance to NVIDIA for good reasons. What if we could do something similar? Just dreaming. And the machine is reacting to what happens in real time and is changing the exercise in real time to what is really required. It's a nice dream, isn't it? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Jan Tanes from the LVNL, Air Traffic Control the Netherlands. Andreas, we know each other. Thanks for giving this presentation and sharing a little bit of your dreams. When you shared your dreams, was the focus within training on the part of the students becoming an air traffic controller, or also on the part for continuation training? With other words, is there for you a difference in focusing on the students or on the training for ETCOs?
In general, there's no difference, because you could use it for the maintenance, you could use it for refresher training, you could identify, I don't know what system is applicable at LVNL, the competency assessment that could lead into a remedial training. The remedial training is the recipe-based exercise creation, and finally, the exposure in a simulator. I think in the end, we will do all. Currently, we are focusing on the ab initio training with the tools we have.
Yeah, and why is that we at the moment just focusing on the ab initio and not on the ETCOs that are, well, also having to do the continuation training? Because in my opinion, and I want to, well, share that with you, the acting ETCOs are a little bit more conservative than ab initio students. Is that correct? Is that also at Newark, or?
Indeed, I would say. Where's Laurent? He said he's afraid of any innovation and change. I'm joking, as controllers usually are. No, just kidding. It's an environment that is perceived safe, and I think because of this, you are by nature reluctant to new things that are introduced and that change your usual comfort zone. But I think you're right. We shouldn't stop there. Maybe it's a good point to be discussed even later.
Yeah, I hope so.
Celine from the SNA. Very nice presentation, which I think was centered on the student and individual training. My question is, we are very glad to be here because, as Laurent said, we are trying to recreating the team. And most of our ADCOs recovered from COVID saying we need team as much as we do now. And I'm wondering if this is an innovation to go for individual training when our ADCOs, as much as ab initios as continuous training, their need is to be involved in a team and to know most of our issues are when students or ADCOs don't feel as being in a team anymore. So how far, I saw the team at one point with one student with his coach, right? But there was one coach and one student. So how far is innovation is going to help us to recreate the team again and to think training as a team process? And is individual training the key thing to all of our issues we have in training right now? Thank you.
If I may answer. Thank you, Celine. You gave the answer already. It's not. And I said it depends. It depends on the individual. And it might be a support. If team is the issue, this is not the solution. We know already, or we think we know already, that everything that happens on the coordination controller part cannot really be tackled with this technology. But the executive controller, why not? We always, and this is the human part, have to identify the root cause. And this is where a coach might decide, or the coaching team might decide, which tool to use to overcome.
And now I would like to ask Charlotte Overmans to come up. She's going to be talking to us about coaching for students during and post-corona. Charlotte, welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Charlotte from SKYS. I have an ADCO background as tower controller and ACC controller. And now I am currently engaged as an HP coordinator at SKYS. And I will try to start the presentation. So SKYS, we deliver ATC service in the Belgium FIR through one ACC center, one national tower in Brussels, and 5 regional towers. We have about 300 ADCOs currently engaged. Since in 2015, after a long period of non-recruitment, we got a very big, ambitious training plan, 10-year training plan, where we accelerate up to 3 batches per year, 3 trainee batches per year that we train to become an ADCO. That's about 45 trainees per year. And in order to meet those needs of that ambitious training plan, we got engaged with EPN in the form of EPMB that delivers most of our ADCO training. And in 2020, at the beginning of the COVID crisis, batch 8 just started. So when COVID started, as you all know, the world stopped turning. Everything closed, our training center closed as well. But soon we found our way to recover from it, and we were able to keep the training center open for all time. So that was the good news. But what we saw, that there was also bad news, that COVID had an impact, a severe impact on the trainees due to the isolation measures that were imposed to them, the virtual classrooms, wearing mouth masks, not being able to have team building activities, not being able to visit the units. And that had a huge impact on the trainees that had a lot of worries and fears. And that resulted into stress and anxiety. It also gave a lot of fatigue due to the constant pressure and stress. They didn't want to get contaminated, because the moment that they got contaminated, their course could end. And the stress and fatigue also caused a lot of motivation issues. Why do I still need to become a NATCO? There's no aircraft flying. I am not in contact with the units, so I can't get myself motivated. The course also lasted much more longer because of split services. There was constantly the risk of stopping the training due to a next lockdown. We all know the story. So we were faced with this as a training organization at SKYS. And beside of that, beside of the difficult training conditions, the stress, fatigue, and motivation issues, we also saw a drop in success rate. Since batch 8, there was a severe increase in failure. And of course, then we need to react. Then for sure, we need to do something about it. And SKYS reacted through an action plan, so-called 10 points to go to 100% success rate. Rather ambitious, but yeah, we need to aim for something. So we started thinking and doing a survey. And then we were thinking, okay, we want to increase the success rate. And we first were thinking, okay, we need to improve recruitment, we need to improve the training process, we need to change the content, we need to improve the feedback procedures. But then we soon discovered that would not be sufficient. We really needed to find a way to truly support the trainees. And that's where coaching came up as an idea, to provide coaching towards a trainee. We were thinking, if we give an increased support for trainees through coaching, we could also have ourselves get an increased insight of all the issues that pop up during a training. And that insight might, on that hand, help us to improve the training process. And the improvement of training process could also build bridges between EPMB, SKYS, and the units. And there it will also increase the success rate. And that would round the circle. So next step that we did, now that we knew that coaching might be a good thing, was to do a survey amongst the training officers, the OGTIs, the assessors, and other people involved into training. I received quite a lot of feedback. First feedback was that the trainees really need to engage. They need to leave the school mentality and go for a more mature approach to engage in the training process. OGTIs also told us that they need to activate, that the trainees miss sometimes a feeling of activation, to really try to explore themselves how to learn from on a proactively way from scenarios. What if that arriving aircraft wouldn't have arrived but diverted? What could I have done? We also received feedback on the self-esteem, that not all trainees were aware about their weaknesses and their strengths. We all know that a natural born controller is an exception, and we all need to build on the strengths in order to compensate for the weaknesses. Mental health was also an issue. They also noticed the stress and fatigue issues of the trainees. And mental readiness. There was also an issue of mental readiness for the trainee to, at the moment of a peak, be there fully ready in the moment, especially after Corona. It was much more difficult to have those peak moments and to be ready at that moment. That was the outcome. So, okay, we said, okay, we are going to go for an individual coaching trajectory for all our trainees. Let's start at the first day of initial training and give them regularly and mandatory coaching till the day that they are released. And then afterwards, they can still have coaching, but then it will be ad hoc or on request. Individual being one-on-one, to have like a confidential setup. Regularly being approximately once every month that we meet with them for about an hour to talk about the issues they experience. And mandatory to overcome the stigmatizing and to really be there as a support and to build a liaison between the coach and the trainee. Now that we knew what we want, we still had some challenges to face before we could start our project. First challenge was the in-house improvement. But given the raised awareness in HP and in well-being in general in society and also in our company, that was rather quickly given, the approval. We were really grateful to get the approval. Next challenge was that we aimed big, but we needed to start small. We needed to start somewhere, and we decided to start in initial training with the basic course starting in December 2021. And then we could gradually grow with the trainees and with the following batches coming to grow in our trajectory. So we started with the pilot project. A rather difficult challenge was to find coaches that dealt with the requirements, having a thorough ADCO background, but also all the skills necessary to be a good coach. It wasn't that difficult to find, and finally, I and a colleague of mine, an ADCO colleague of mine, we were trained to become a coach ourselves. And we were really lucky that after a couple of months through the CivMil joint venture that we got a military psychologist, Anne Maas, who half-time is now also coaching us. And she has a lot of experience with coaching military jet pilots and ADCOs. Next challenge was, if my mouse is working, maybe my battery is low. Maybe that I need to finish the presentation. Next challenge was that we needed to have an alignment. We really needed a lot of time to get together with all the parties involved into training and to make sure that everybody, their role was well strict and defined, that we didn't interfere into each other's role. That took quite a lot of time because coach within initial training was a new function. And then, for sure, as you all know, we didn't want the training process to become longer due to the coaching. And that wasn't easy for us to find some free spaces into that course plan. At the end, we resolved that problem by ordering some sim pilots during the coaching days. We have full coaching days, and then we order some extra sim pilots that take the place of the trainee during the hour that he comes to coaching. And then the most difficult challenge, but the most important one, was that we needed confidentiality. We needed to be sure to work as a coach in a fully confidential setup. We wanted to have input from the course supervisor on one hand, but of course from the trainee on the other hand. But we needed to have a dedication that we didn't need to give any output from it. Everything that was dealt within the coaching session needed to stay within the coaching session. And we got approval from all parties that we could work in a confidential setup. We were really grateful for that. Okay, so now all challenges were checked. And then we still need to know, okay, what are we going to coach about? Because we knew there was a stress issue, but what is really our framework? What are we working on? So if you take a look at the issues of the trainee in general, we can state that there are two categories. They have private issues and work-related issues. As for the private issues, we decided that's not the aim of the coach of SKYS, unless on the way they affect, of course, their training trajectory. What we do is that we refer them to our employee assistance program. Probably a lot of you also have an employee assistance program. That's a 24/7 support program in a fully confidential setup that they can call for psychological support, 5 sessions a year, fully for free and confidential. So work-related, private issues weren't covered. Work-related issues, you all know, to become an ADCO, you need to have those 10 competencies as prescribed in the ICAO competency framework. That's really the course supervisor and the instructors that deal with that. What we as a coach do is to deal with the problem behind the problem. If he is experiencing situational awareness, how does that come? Is that due to stress or due to something else? So our framework is behind the competency framework and is really focused on mental fitness on one hand and physical fitness on the other hand. If you talk about physical fitness, it's about fatigue, physical activity, encouraging physical activity, and nutrition. We give them some tips and tricks, or we find together with them an action plan to improve on that domain. For mental fitness, so far, we discovered those categories: stress, assertiveness, motivation, confidence, focus, perfectionism, how to receive feedback, how to deal with that, teamwork issues, and pressure. Okay, challenges covered, framework covered. What do we do? What are our techniques? So maybe it's easy to explain that we use basically two models as a framework, but of course we go beyond it. The first model is a model from our military psychologist, which is the technique to optimize potential, which comes from the French psychologist, originally designed for top sporters, but adapted by the French army for the jet fighters, and then adapted by our military psychologist for the Belgian jet fighters and ATCO. It has two pillars: improve theoretical knowledge on stress, sleep, and motivation. And then there are three pillars of practical training: muscle relaxation, breathing relaxation, and visualization. And that really provides for a toolbox of techniques that can be used during the three stages that are important during, let's say, a sim run or a day of training. You want to dynamize your trainee in order to increase his heart rate and to be really ready and focused to start his job. You want him to regulate his stress and his performance between the acceptable limits during the run. And then afterwards, you want your trainee to recuperate as soon as possible in order to relax and to be ready the next day. That's our first model that came from the military. The other model came from Karine and I, the other coaches that were ICISF qualified, and we used the 7 C's. How does a coaching model look like? We need to set up the context. Context is work-related issues. Connection, make sure that we clarify that there is a confidential setup and that there is a bound between the coach and the trainee. We clarify, we are looking together, what is the problem behind the problem? Is it the stress? Is it the motivation? What's really underlying underneath it? We ask an approval, a formal approval of the trainee to work on that problem if he agrees or not. And then we do the active work, we challenge them. We don't go for granted and really challenge them and dig into the problem deeper and deeper and really try the trainee himself to come up with an action plan, to activate himself out of that impasse that he's dealing with and to come to a conclusion himself and to work on for the next month until the next session. And we also always take time to close the session, because when they have finished their session with the coach, they need to go immediately back to the simulator. So you really need time to close it and to really leave the emotions in the room. Okay, we have the two models, but what is really important to mention is that the coach for sure is not a guru with all the knowledge, with the magic stick that resolves all problems that occur. It doesn't work like that. We stress the importance of the trainee. We believe in the trainee, his strength, and in his own capabilities to deal with his issues. We are just there as a mirror and to explore together with him how he can find the strength within himself to deal with it. All focus is on the trainee. And in the next couple of slides, I will guide you through some examples of coaching sessions. Every coaching session is unique. One problem can have a lot of solutions, so it are just random examples to give you an idea on what we work on. If we see that there is a fatigue issue, it's not so easy to click on the... Yeah, I need a mental coach for that. I'm stressed. We first will explore whether there is an issue in the amount of sleep. For instance, if the trainee, for instance, is coming from far away with public transport, that can be the case. Or if he has a newborn baby at home. If he doesn't have sufficient sleep, we really are going to explore with him what might help for him. That might be as easy to set an alarm clock to stop watching Netflix at 12 o'clock, or to go and change a location to sleep because the newborn baby keeps him away. And sometimes really explaining him the power of power napping also helps him. Like, okay, it's okay to do power napping, and that's how you do it. If he has sufficient sleep, but the quality isn't sufficient, then we really explore together with the trainee what might be beneficial for him. That might be mindfulness exercises, breathing exercises, and so on. If quality and quantity is sufficient, but he still is tired or fatigued, then we really are putting all our energy into energizing the trainee. He doesn't need power naps at that moment. He really needs to explore how he gets his battery charged up, going into nature, listening to music, going for a dinner with friends, whatever works for him. More than half of the sessions of our coaching deal about perfectionism and stress. As for perfectionism, it's rather important to show to the trainee that any solution that is above the horizontal line of safety and at the right-hand side of efficiency is a good solution. As long as you are in that quadrant, you're good enough, and there are millions of solutions that are good enough. So really try to change a top-down approach. I need to be the best from the bottom-up approach. Good is good enough. And we also, of course, work with them on the stress coping mechanisms. What are the coping mechanisms that they deal with? What are the strengths that they have in themselves to deal with stress? And that's how we work with it. Focus is also rather important. Sometimes a trainee doesn't show consistency into focus. He is in initial training for about a year, and it's rather difficult to keep focused for a year every day again in each simulator, and especially during sessions that are rather slow or after a busy moment in the course. And then we go first explore what is the real cause of focus. Is there something underneath? Is it because of lack of confidence or something else, or is it really just boredom and fatigue? And then we kind of deal with it on a creative way to help them increase the focus. Sometimes they come up with crazy ideas like creating a mantra or singing a song or doing a visualization just before it, breathing in or out just before it. It are rather creative things. Sometimes they also come with an image that they have in their mind, and they pop it up again when they're doing the run. Sometimes they also make a list. They really come up with a lot of crazy good ideas on a creative way. Confidence. Sometimes, in general, we see that the trainee is feeling good, and from the moment that a couple of runs are going bad, confidence is really going really down, really quick. Sometimes that also has to do with the fact that they receive a lot of feedback. Every day, again and again, they receive feedback on what should be better, what could have been done differently, and they are sometimes mixing up getting feedback with getting bad feedback, and they forget all the good things that they do, the 90% of good things that they do. And we explore together with them, okay, aren't there any good things that you do during a run? Try to focus on that. We also deal with the good enough, like in perfectionism. But what is very important is that we really put all our focus on effort instead of results. The trainee can work on the effort. The result is not his to decide. That's up to the course supervisor and the instructor. The effort is being focused, visualize, breathing, making sure that he sleeps sufficiently, that he has good nutrition, that he works on his stress coping mechanisms, and for the rest, that's not his outcome. For so far, the examples. Accomplishments so far. So I told you we started in September 2021. In about 10 months, we did about 200 coaching sessions of an hour by 3 coaches for about 45 trainees. We received a lot of feedback already from the course supervisor. Rather encouraging, they say that 80% of the 80% of the trainees that participate are beneficial, and that they really give feedback to the course supervisor that they really think it's an added value. And one course supervisor in the beginning, he said at least 2 of the students of this batch, of the 14 people in this batch, would have failed without coaching. For us, of course, the feedback of the trainees is at least as important. And that's also rather encouraging. They say that they feel supported, that somebody cares about them. They like the blanket over them and the confidential setup, that they can complain about it without being judged, without being assessed, that they can show their vulnerability. That they learn tips and tricks to deal with situations like stress and motivation, that they discover more their strengths and how it can compensate their weaknesses. And even 2 already thanked us for the coaching, even if they failed the course, because thanks to coaching, they understood why they failed the course, and that helped them to start the future sooner. So as a conclusion, outcome of our coaching, it's for sure a supporting measure. 80% benefits from it. 20% maybe doesn't really need a coach, but at least they feel supported and they know that the coach is there. The idea that the coach is there already is sufficient for them. It's very difficult to measure the success, the outcome of coaching. Is it a success? Is it thanks to coaching that somebody succeeds? Very difficult to assess. And thirdly, coaching is only one piece of a puzzle with many pieces that we need in order to increase success rates, but it for sure is a piece of the puzzle. What's next? We dream big, of course. We all dream big. We started with initial training. We want to continue in initial training, coaching and initial training. We want to improve it. We continuously want to assess whether what we do is relevant or not. Then we want to grow into unit training. And maybe later on, we also want to grow to give coaching to the OGTIs or to other ADCOs. And we want to get all parties involved, HR, training, but also planning department. We need also the ADCOs who are non-OGTIs, because we all know it takes a village to raise a child. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Very interesting. Are there any questions from the audience? Maybe just one point that came to my mind is a lot about the well-being of the trainee. And IASA has been running a set of well-being conferences and webinars, which you might like to look at, which are relevant for the trainees, but also for other ADCOs. Thank you very much once again. Yes, Laurent, sorry.
Thank you. If I've well understood, it's kind of mandatory coaching for initial training for 45 students, so okay. And you intend to develop in unit training, but will it be a mandatory coaching or you have to select students who face training problems and then coach them? What is your aim?
We will do it either mandatory for all people in the unit. We are now doing a pilot project for one unit, for one regional tower, then it's mandatory for all the trainees over there. Because if you only do it when they face problems, it's really stigmatizing them. And instead of helping them, you sometimes push them more deeper into it. Whereas if you do it mandatory, they know they need to come anyway. They don't need to talk. If they have no issues, that's no problem. But only doing it if they have a problem sometimes works counterproductive.
Just to share, in EDAC for initial training, we choose the trainees that are maybe a bit weaker, and then we help them by kind of coach. It's not a real coach, it's a psychologist that is specialized in training. And then it's maybe not my job to do it, but the SNA has three coaches, sorry, for
four.
all, or four nearly, yes, four, but only for people. No, okay, so you will. I thought it was just in case of some problems, not for all the unit training.
At the beginning, yes. But
Wait. Okay, so thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, it all started with coaching people in difficulties, but we are trying to expand the thing, and actually we don't have the resources to do it right now, but the obvious goal is what you're doing. Because if the coach appears when the problem is raised, then it's stigmatizing, exactly what you said. So it's not the point. What you're doing is exactly what should be done. So thank you, wonderful presentation, and have a good time doing so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, it's not a question. Actually, it's to congratulate you on the great initiative. I really, as well, reverberate that it's from my point of view a great initiative. I've been helping a number of schools with trying to look about how to activate students and thinking about the students. And one of the things we always mention is the bridging the gap from, especially in initial training, of somebody who's a school leaver, but now who is in training for a specific goal. And as in coaching, it says it's performance is all the potential, less the interference. And there is a lot of interference going on during initial training. One of my other, you are hitting it by having a specific team dealing with this, and I like the way you said that it is compulsory for all, so that it doesn't stigmatize. One other thing that I have been dreaming about for a long time as well is that the people who are in contact with these students on a day-to-day basis, the instructors, get a minimum amount of training that wouldn't make them coaches, but that they would understand coaching, and that they have a module in their initial training about how to coach. And not simply how to instruct, and that's something that I'm trying to introduce in my refresher trainings for OJTI. But having a dedicated team is something which is spot on. It takes resources and it takes commitment from your company. And chapeau, well done.
Thank you.
That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you for your presentation. One question from my side: have you identified some of the trends? Meaning, like, what are the problems? What are the most problems they have? Like, do they have mostly problems with fatigue, with stress, or whatever? And if like 80% have the same problems, what are you doing about it? Maybe like in advance that you help them before it comes up in the coaching.
Very nice question. We are not that far yet. We are now discovering trends. Like I said, more than half of the sessions are about perfectionism and stress. Confidence is a rather difficult topic. When it pops up, it immediately pops up rather hard. But next step would be that we really analyze the trends, maybe to find like a main idea, when is that trend popping up, and if we see it, then we can act on it and sit together with the course supervisor on how to proactively work on it, by maybe changing the content of the course or putting a break somewhere, but we are not there yet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now I would like to invite Hugo van der Wee and Joop Wessels from LVNL, who are going to be talking to us about the innovations introduced in LVNL's eco-training system. Welcome.
I'll have a quick start for today. Thank you, Sky Guide, for having us here today, for hosting this event. We're delighted to share some of our experience with training under the conditions of the COVID for the last years. I think we have an interesting case for you to share of Maastricht-Aken Airport. This is a case where we have been doing things really different than we used to do before. But before that, let's give me a very brief introduction of the both of us. My name is Joop Wessels. I'm a program manager at LVNL, and I mainly focus on changing the business rather than running the business. And I'm leading various projects aiming on innovating the training ecosystem. And next to me, Hugo, we've been cooperating for about 2.5 years now. We're the new kids on the block at LVNL. Hugo is a specialist in learning and development, is implementing new training concepts, and also is part of our team of Frank Klap. Some of you know him really good, I think. So yeah. Before we go to the Maastricht-Aken Airport, I think it's important for you to know a bit more about the state of our training organization, because to be honest, we faced some difficulties in the last couple of years, both in terms of quality, but also in quantity of delivering new ATCOs to the LVNL system. We had some changes in management. And also, in my opinion, we do lack the ability to adapt really quick to new circumstances. So this is not a very good starting point for a training organization back in March 2020 when COVID hit us. So under these conditions, this is important for you to understand where we were coming from and where we are going now. So concerning the Maastricht-Aken Airport, let's set some of the scene, because from a distance it looks like a very sleepy small airfield where nothing really much happens and where there is no need to change or no need to innovate, because they run things like they did last year or maybe 5 years ago or maybe even 10 years ago.
But in fact, there are some really life-changing or game-changing events coming up to Maastricht-Aken Airport. And I do believe that we are on the brink of some very new stuff going on over there. To start with this program we call centralized base, which means that we are going to work remotely from Schiphol Airport. So with this digital tower unit, we're going to have our service delivered from Schiphol and not from Maastricht anymore. So this is a big game changer, both in terms of technological issues, but also, of course, from a human factor perspective. Second, we're going to implement a couple of new technological innovations. For example, the ICAS system, which is a big change for us. I think some of my colleagues, especially from DFS, are a few steps ahead already. But again, for us, both in terms of technical issues and also from a human factor perspective, these are some really big changes. And in the slipstream of it, we're going to work with electronic flights, strips, same story, massive change, especially for a small airfield like Maastricht-Aken Airport. So the third thing I want to point out has something to do with our staff and our people on that field. We've seen that we have a shortage of staff, and we estimate it on about 15%, but it can be slightly higher if you take a closer look, and it's going to be a bit more higher because of retirement of some of the staff over there. From a training perspective, we only have an output of 1 ATCO per year for at least the last, let's say, 5, 6, 7 years. So we don't really grow to this new level of required ATCOs. Well, then COVID hit us, and I think for most of you guys, we faced the same problems, both in terms of the lack of air traffic, which made it hardly possible to train, but also due to sanitary regulations. Like, for example, the distance we have to keep in the tower or on the approach on the simulators. And then in the slipstream of this centralized base, we have to prepare our staff to move from Maastricht to the Amsterdam region. And imagine that you're living there for, I don't know, 20 years, 30 years. You live in Maastricht or in the very scenic environment around there, and you're basically asked or forced to drive 200 kilometers to the north and settle yourself in the Amsterdam region, where house prices are soaring, where you're far away from family, friends, and you basically have to start a new life if you want to continue the job you've been choosing for lately. So for all of these projects, for all of these programs, we are in desperate need of skilled ATCOs to build on this project portfolio. And like I said, we have a shortage, and we were not able to get up to this needed level of ATCOs very quick. So yeah, we need to change our way of training. That was basically the message for ourselves. And then my colleague Frank Klapp came into place. I think most of you guys know him. And he actually said, we are going to do this completely different than we were used to be. So we set up this program, and we call it Regional Unit Heading 021. 021 stands for the year 2021, so we've working on it for quite a while, and we are not ready yet. And we invented, or we came up with 4 building blocks for this approach. And I will point them out very briefly and then give the word to Hugo. To start with attracting foreign ATCOs. We thought it would be a good idea to attract already skilled ATCOs in our program so that we can get them up to speed quicker than the ab initio trainees we were used to work with. Second, we thought it's a good idea to go locally, so train locally, have simulators in place on Maastricht rather than on Schiphol, and develop this thing we called SimCity. It was kind of a catchy name too, which actually means that we do everything with local staff, local simulators, and well, there where the magic happens at Maastricht airfield. Third, one of Hugo's training concepts, implementing carousel training, which basically means that we're going to combine on-the-job training with simulator training and roulette between groups of students rather than follow like a very structural linear path we've been used to work on in the past. And fourth, this was for us very important. This is not a project or a program of adjusting a couple of things in the simulator, tweak on this process. this is really about change management, and the impact of everything that's happening on Maastricht Aachen Airport is so big that you need a change management approach rather than just some small interventions. And we have to really cooperate with all the people there and attract them into the core of our project to be successful. And with these 4 building blocks, we had this goal of delivering 14 ATCOs within about 2 or 3 years. And like I mentioned before, we had only 1 per year, so we're going to squeeze 14 years or 15 years within just 2 or maybe 3 years. And that's where we are right now.
Yep, thank you, Joep. I fully appreciate to be able to share our story, because the thing is, we worked on this for 2 years, and sometimes it was really hard, and sometimes we were desperate, and so it's really cool to have a podium and share what we experienced. The story begins for me that in May 2020 I came on board. That was 2 months after we had our first lockdowns. And then I also went to Maastricht and also the other airport in Groningen. Yeah, and it felt a little eerie there, because it was empty parking lots. Everything was empty and everybody was standoffish. And there I started to share this vision. So maybe at coaching, the ATCO is not the guru of the trainee, but we have a guru, and that is Frank. Because these are actually, it was my assignment, like go and make that happen. And you see the context, and it's quite challenging. It's a step change for everybody there, but also for LVNL. And in this kind of post-apocalyptic world, we had to start building. And it was just me driving up there and sharing this vision that we had. Now, I can understand how the first reactions were. This is a story of a whole team. So there's like a lot of people behind us. So there we have these 21 air traffic controllers that we have in. We have people who are in team and culture. We have people who run sims. We have sim pilots. We have project management. We have our course management. So it's definitely a team effort. So I'll start with the first one, and that is our foreign ATCO pool. It's one by one. It's part of the concept. So I don't. Probably you know that that when you have these remote airfields, you have also an ops team, an operational team that is very far, maybe from headquarters. Maybe feel a little bit neglected. Maybe there's not a lot going on. Maybe always during shifts they have time to talk. So there is, people are maybe a little reluctant to change and to outsiders. They don't see many people from headquarters coming over. It's really the reality. So it was very important in this approach that foreign ATCOs, like people who are actually skilled, and nobody has a doubt that they're actually really good air traffic controllers, come in and bring also part of their culture to change this local culture that also has its disadvantages, to create like this multi-national team, the United Nations. So instead of like this monoculture, go into like this United Nations type of atmosphere. Another thing that's really important is also that we need to get everybody in this collaborative mood. And our guru, Frank, he is very good at what we say kicking in doors. So he also shared like, I don't care what you're saying, but we're going to do this. So in the change approach is maybe not something that we would want to choose. So gradually we grew into a different approach and took Frank along with us. What was very important, the choice, you can doubt it if that's a good choice, but everybody had to speak Dutch. That was a decision made because of talking to airport services, and okay, it's a decision made. But that gave us a chance to really integrate these people, these foreign people, into the Dutch culture. So we made a program with a renowned Dutch language institute, and we had a local teacher, and we challenged them to reinvent themselves in the Dutch way. So they all have their new Dutch identity. And in the same time, with their Dutch identity, also this team needs to get a new identity. And so it's really about not sticking in your own ways, but trying to build that together. What came up and also was very conflictuous, but very interesting and very enriching, is that these people who actually experience air traffic controllers come there, see the modus operandi of the team and say, hey, this is not 100% ICAO, or should you do that? Which actually challenge these teams as their strength as a safety team. Can we absorb this feedback? So also in that, they were actually an enrichment to the unit. Later I come with the results, but yeah, this is what happened. So what is very important is that we have standalone simulators. That was a choice. We do not have all these remote technology that some of you have, and actually we would love to have. Let's state that. But here it was a situation where people from Maastricht had to go to Amsterdam, maybe for a week or a couple of days, and then be trained once in a while. And we wanted to change it, to have the facilities there, to have this idea of always available, just that you can really use it just in time. When you need it, the simulator is there. So it's a standalone simulator, actually an emulator, that's totally fit for the job. People are trained tower and approach, so they do both. And we have both facilities there. What we did, which is for LVNL also a step change, that we had dedicated pilots in that we train to be good pilots. We also had KLM pilots in there. That was nice because of COVID. We could have them. And what we did is actually try to develop them in a way that they are a self-directed team, so that they can choose themselves, that they're really good sparring partners, that they're authorities in their field. So they are able to build exercises now. They also really appreciated by ATCOs. They're supervising it, but the sim pilots are doing it themselves. They also came up with new innovative ideas. For instance, one of them is to have to link the tower and the approach unit to each other, so you can have combination exercises, and they even created special exercises for it. Yeah, and it's really this recipe-based training what we're doing, because we're really able that, if, for instance, if you say, oh, now I want to train the timing for the airplanes that go to Geilenkirchen Airport, that is really, they're really able to provide that, and quickly as well. Like within an hour, 2 hours, they can really adjust exercises, and they really can do this recipe-based training. So there's no delay, and it's really trying to provide this personal learning path for the ATCOs in training. Well, this carousel training concept, you said it's mine. It's actually not, it's Frank's idea, and it was something that he kept telling, and nobody believes. Nobody believes that's actually a good thing. Well, that was at in LVNL premises, but I think that that for this personal learning path, it's actually vital. So the idea that, especially in unit training, that you see that people need to develop certain skills. These learning needs are actually visible. We see that a lot of ATCOs, they are actually panicking because they don't know how people can really achieve these skills. As an example, somebody is on the job training and does the same thing wrong every time. Then they probably will say, yeah, he's just not fit for the job, because he cannot do it. And I cannot provide the proper training to give him that specific skill. So it's very easy to reject a person. And right now we can say, oh, is this the learning need? Okay, let's discuss. Let's discuss what is actually the underlier. What is the skill that we're talking about? Is it, do we need some part-based training for it, part-task training for it? Do we need like some combined exercise? Do we need to add some coaching to it? So we are better in analyzing the learning need, we're better in setting a learning goal, and we're also better in the learning intervention. And that, I think, still saves people from not being thrown out of the system. But what it also helps with is that we can speed up training. And one very important part of it is that some people do not get the traffic. We have very slow airfield. Do not get the traffic, but people know like, okay, this is a good air traffic controller. Let's provide them the proper training in the simulator, and then they can be licensed. So important is that what we did, the challenge from 1 rating per year to 14 ATCOs in 3 years, is that we increased the OJT capacity, because we now put easily 4 people in on-the-job training, because they mix it with simulator. Say they have like 2 or 3 shifts per week in the on-the-job training, and then 2 or 3 shifts in the simulator. That was something that was unheard of. And now when you go to Maastricht Airport, you talk to the air traffic controllers, they find it just a normal thing that they would do. So it's an interesting shift in mindset of what training is about and what is actually effective training. Important is that, and actually we're working on that right now, is that also on the job trainers, they really need extra help with identifying the learning needs, with trying to be more in tune with what the trainee needs. So actually we put a program in place to train them more on that end. The last part of the approach, that was the change approach, which is a very interesting, we call it Klappiaans, which means like Klappien from Frank Klapp. His approach was like, okay, we have a training organization which is quite traditional. And we have a lot of, we have mindsets that think in a certain way. But I want to implement my change. Let's cut ourselves loose and let's understand what we want to do and try to execute it ourselves. So we cut away from this training academy. Well, later on, you will explain how we bring back the learnings to the training academy, but it's like kind of a laboratory that we created for each other. Which makes it that we don't have to go through tedious processes of change. We can just do that with a local team. What Frank is good at, I think, is building teams. So getting really dedicated professionals into the team. People with different specialities. For instance, I'm not an ATCO. I don't have a background in it. And I said, okay, then I have to go on the simulator. He said, no. You cannot go on the simulator. So to kind of mark the difference, it's like, okay, you can understand it, you can challenge people from your specialty, but don't become like us. And so we have a team of different, we have a senior change consultant in, we have, I'm like a learning and development consultant, so we have specialties, and all the specialties together create a good team that gives like kind of the weight that we need to pull this task. Yeah, and then the last part, it's maybe an open door that I'm kicking in, but it's something that is a very important and a very slow process, is how do you connect local officers. In the background of what you've described, the difficulties of this context, how can you build trust? How can you slowly get their information in? Yeah, it was already said, like, listen to your people, listen what they have to say, then they're your best consultants. Well, that's what we try to do, and that's how we also try to see development of our local staff. We had a course manager in Maastricht who is a very young guy, so we could shape him a little bit, the ops team could shape him a little bit, and together he's like now blooming. It's really great to see, and he's following a leadership course, and he's really, like, his personal leadership is really to an effect that he can really fight for the people, fight for the trainees, and also becomes an authority in that team. So you can see that these local training officers also need to grow. And that's really part of what we're trying to achieve. What results did we achieve? I don't know how I'm in the time. Do I need to speed up? Or, yeah, we're good. Okay. Yeah, it's 20 minutes and 2 years of experience. So back to that team and culture program. We were in COVID times. We couldn't connect. We couldn't see each other. This team that we're dealing with didn't see each other for about 8 or 10 years. So they weren't in the same room at all. It's just no time, like shortage of staff, COVID. So at one moment, that was a year ago, we had enough. So we raised red flags and we organized a meeting to close the airport for 2 days. And we had a meeting together. And that was actually the start of success. Just doing it together, seeing eye to eye, saying what you wanted to say, like we say what, in Dutch, what you have on your liver. They really spit it out. And from that moment, it was very, I think it's a beautiful process where we from both ends saw like, oh, they're not really bad guys. And it was an invitation, meaning that the ops team said, come. So I went there in the summer, sitting in the tower, talking, challenging them. And then there was Max Verstappen's private airplane was landing, and I got binoculars, so it was like this whole experience. But it were the guys who were always a little reluctant for change, but they then also expressed, I'm proud of what we're having. This is our training center. Look at what we're having. We have simulators, and we were able to have individual learning paths. And so this pride and this ownership grew and grew and grew. Well, you can see that I get energized because of it, because this eerie feeling of this airplane, nobody there, this reluctance, and in the same time, these people who have to move. And it's actually something that I empathize with. Together, we still can do something positive. So currently, we already have achieved 5 ratings, despite our COVID challenges, despite these change difficulties. So actually, we're quite proud of it that we have achieved it. And also, what I really love to see is that now also the ops team really believes in it. They're like, yeah, we can do this. And like for the next and the next and the next guy or woman who needs to get licensed, they don't feel that's a big threshold. The first one's like, can we do this? And then that person was licensed and like, okay, maybe we can do the next. And now they're like, yeah, this is just the pace that we're in. So we're projecting now about 6 ratings per year. So we already achieved 2, and then the next one is this month. So we are already then 3 for the first 2 quarters. So we were on that pace. Can we speed up more? I don't know. I don't think it's really really important. It's very important to optimize the flow. Yeah? So the idea is to this the step change we already made, but then we need to optimize and also bring in quality, train better, to also not lose people in the process. So we have a certain success criteria, and I have to be super honest. We also have this field in the north that I'm not sharing. And the reason I'm not sharing that is because a lot of things are different there. So we do not have instructors in the simulator there, because this team cannot provide us with instructors. And that creates that this whole concept is kind of falling apart. So then also we do not have the ops team on board just yet. We're still working on it, but it doesn't get this traction, it doesn't get this speed, it doesn't get this energy. And that's something that, yeah, again, that is really, when I'm telling the story, like, yeah, this is really good, I still think like, yeah, but not good enough yet, because there we also need to make this step change. But that's also what I try to say, is that we are so dependent, and we're so dependent of each other. There's interdependency, and I'm talking about management, but I'm talking about LVNL board. I'm talking also about airfield. I'm talking ops team. It's just such a web of dependencies that you cannot control every bit of it. And we try to, but sometimes, yeah, you just lack very vital resources just because you lack it, and you cannot really change it. And I know that also the board and the management, they're trying to their abilities the best, but sometimes LVNL also has other interests. Yeah, and that's really tough. And an example is the scarcity. As you maybe know, that when people are poor, they're actually, it's like a psychological problem. So when people don't have time, it creates a psychological problem. So you need to create buffers. Buffers in money, buffers in time, because then you don't have the stress and you can ease into it. Well, for instance, we are training people, but then another guy from the ops team is being transferred to another department because it was promised to him already 3 years ago. And then the whole team is like, yeah, now we're having this successful concept, we're training, but now our buffer is gone again. And we still need to work every Sunday and all this kind of thing. So what's very important, I think, in this change is psychological level of this team that's really trying their best. But yeah, if you're always in this scarcity, it's actually damaging for your health. Yeah, but this interdependency. The only thing you can do is like come together, work together. Say we're working shoulder to shoulder. We're not opposing each other. It's a shoulder to shoulder operation, and show appreciation. It's not always easy. But what I think is a very positive thing is that you need a few pioneers. We went to AZ Alkmaar, a football team. I don't know if you know the team. It's like number 4 or 5 in the Netherlands, but they revolutionized their training system. There are a couple of clubs in Europe where they compare themselves with, and they said like the way we build it, a couple of guys who believed in it. So I think it's like the hope that you can have is like some people who have this mindset, this growth mindset of understanding that with hard work, with the right attitude, we can build things instead of this fixed mindset. Say you need to be born air traffic controller, or you're never good at it, or it's luck. No, it's just hard work, and you want to build it in your organization. Then they can ignite a fire. That's actually also what we proved. We only had one guy, this course manager, young guy who believes in it, and he's now also sharing it with other people. So what I think is that we really established this training culture with a couple of people, boots on the ground, who did the work and can also spread it from there. Yeah, and the last one is something that's 2 years I'm talking about. And we once had an auditing committee. There was I don't know if they were all from DFS, but at least 2 were German, 1 was from Zimbabwe. And they looked at it, and they immediately made the right assessment. And I said, wow, you're sharp. And they're like, yeah, it's so comparable with what we know. And they looked at it and like, yeah, there's going to be 4, 5, 6 years kind of endeavor. But at first we were in it like, oh, it's 2 years and then we're done. Well, it's not. So definitely a marathon. Of course, we create a flow, and that flow can like predictably produce the right number of people. And you have to maintain that, you have to optimize it. But in order to get there, you also have this tenacity, this vigor to keep going.
Yeah, well, like you said, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yeah.
And I started this presentation not with the goal of telling you only a success story with a paved road towards the end, but it's also a story about our struggles and our battle against the system or against some rigid mindsets and whatsoever. And I also pointed out the state of this training organization that we are working for. And for us to start local, to start small, we learned a lot of lessons which we want to implement in our main port. So especially for the area control department, but also for the tower and approach units. And by translating all these lessons to the main port, we slowly try to change also the rest of our training organization. And it may sound easy, but in fact it's quite hard. And I'm very sure that in the next years we're gonna take 2 steps ahead today, and then 1 step back for tomorrow. But we need to keep this change from Maastricht-Aken Airport in mind in order to change a lot of stuff on the main port. We need to change authorizations, roles, responsibilities, because I think it's the only way forward if you want to look at a predictable and reliable training system. So hopefully we can get back to you in about, let's say, 2 or 3 years to tell you something about the change Schiphol Airport and area control has made by us and a lot of our colleagues working on this project.
Yeah. And one thing though, you can already help us today, because part of it is also that we already been to ANAC, and we had video conferencing with DFS, and we're trying to create new relationships because we think it's very important to learn from each other. And the visits that we did and the talks that we had is really, really enriching. You cannot underestimate how important it is to share these stories and to build with all these insights. So thank you very much for...
Yeah, so see this as an invitation to step by and come visit us, and we'll be happy to share everything we know and would like to learn from you guys as well. So thank you for your understanding.
Thank you.
Hi, Emmanuel from French DSNA. Thanks for your presentation, and of course, thanks for your work. I have a quick question. When you talked about, you spoke about the interdependency and your relationship with your management at VNL, and what's the emphasis here? Regarding the training speed and the length of the training, or do you emphasize more the success rate? You know, what's your main goal here? And of course, what does your management thinks about it?
It's a very good question. Do you talk about this regional unit management or more board level? What is
The board level.
Board level. Well, I think that the board regards that the trainings can be unsafe at times, and the fact that we have not every unit training is the same, so it's hard to generalize. But in general, they have sometimes a feeling like, yeah, we're not doing good enough. So why can we not have better success rates? Why can we not provide a more safer training path? But when you dig more deeper into it, sometimes you can also think like, okay, why are we training so long? Sometimes training paths at unit training will take 1.5 years. I know that other organizations say 1.5 years. We have 20 weeks max. So for instance, so I think that very important to like understand that when you analyze it, for us it's more quality focused. So the essence for me is like when you talk about learning efficiency, that is actually quality, because learning efficiency is just learn the right thing. And if somebody is falling out because you're missing a thing, then you really feel it in your quality that's not efficient at all. So to me, efficiency is quality. And I also think to get the job done, you need this qualitative aspect. And the thing is that yesterday when we were going to Switzerland, I got news that one of the guys in Maastricht, he quits. And then I analyzed, and like we did everything right, but he made a personal decision, which is also possible. But I think that we can also see him in the success rate, but has nothing to do with our quality. So I think to optimize quality is the most important thing. And then sometimes the board is maybe a little bit quick in their judgment in thinking that it's very easy to train air traffic controllers. And for me, as an outsider coming in and digging into it, I think it's not. It's very technical. It has what I always describe to my colleagues who are also in learning development. It's a high-performance job. It's a high-tech learning environment. It's about people. So that aspect that you also have to find your own ways, create a culture in it, stick to it. Yeah, that's something that we always also want to try to convince the organization a little bit more of.
Thank you.
Well, I would like to ask the presenters quickly to come in front. Martin, Laurent, Andreas as well, and Charlotte, obviously. I think you were the... Yeah.
Beautiful.
Big applause for the very nice presentations. During the sessions, I made a couple of small questions, but I hope at least, and I'm sure that from the audience as well, some interesting questions might come up. But one question, if we talked about people actually, and people in the center of all this process, learning, training, coaching, and whatever. And I think as when COVID kicked in short time, quite a lot of changes had to be implemented, these decisions taken, innovative ideas on the table, short decision and done. And my question would be actually, how did the instructors have taken these decisions on board? And then maybe more important as well, how the trainees felt in this. Because I remember just at Skyguide, we had tower training running, ADI, we had an APS rating running, we had ACS rating running, and obviously for the tower guys it was quite tricky because we had to close the school. We had to close the school, we had to close the tower guys, it was quite tricky because we had to close the school. And obviously for the tower guys it was quite tricky because we had to close the school. And obviously for the tower guys it was quite tricky because we had to close the school. but some days later, remote radar simulation was put in place. So for the radar trainees, everything was kind of safe, but question how they felt actually in this. They were completely in this crazy training process, pressure, stress, we heard before in the presentations, and then all of a sudden they had to go home, install a big screen at home, a computer, and then do all the training from home. But the same was for the instructors. And this would be the first question. I would bring the question to you, Antonio and Hansi, representing the instructors actually, but you were certainly very close to the students as the training delivery chief. So can you give some insights into that?
Sure, thanks, Chris. And good question. It was said earlier a couple of times that qualified ATCOs and instructors, of course, take less well to change than students do. So in a very short answer to a very good question, instructors initially, I think, were a little bit, there was a certain shared trepidation. It's certainly my experience, having traveled globally and working wherever I have, that ATCOs necessarily are not the most tech savvy. Suddenly they are not just coming into work and sitting down and giving instruction in a simulator. They actually have to go home, set up whatever they have to set up in order to deliver remotely to a student. This was new to everybody, of course. I think if you go back to January 2020 and you tell the world that we'd be delivering full-on remote ATC courses online from anywhere in the world with an internet connection, you'd think you're crazy. So I think that the instructors started with a certain sense of trepidation, but in the end, we've delivered 8 courses so far, ACS and APS courses remotely. And in the end, the instructors love it. Unit coaches, for example, from Geneva don't have to travel up to Wangen, up to Zurich, in order to train. They sit in their living rooms or wherever they have their domestic home setups, which is great. And the students, I think, at the time, they're pretty much the opposite. At the time, they were just happy to have a job, to be honest. And this is what they expressed. Are our jobs, are we going to be fired? We started hearing what was coming out of some ANSPs in Europe and across the world where training was terminated, where training even at unit level, at very advanced levels, training was terminated. We heard, just a couple of weeks ago, we heard an instructor in an ANSP, I won't say where they had students, he knows students personally, who were 2 weeks away from final check. They were terminated. So our students start hearing this, of course, and completely so also trepidation, but is my future secure? And now towards the end, the last course that was decided, Chris, I don't remember whether it was this end of December, beginning January, that the APS course will be delivered remotely again with the information that we had at hand. And the students, they were like, again, everybody was just a little bit tired of COVID and the anti-social nature thereof, and they just wanted to come back and be in the same room again. But generally, the response has been excellent. Hansi, anything to add there?
No. Thank you, Antonio. From my point of view, it was a big challenge. Obviously, the students were afraid at first. We had many calls in the first week after the lockdown. Everybody was afraid, like, what is going on? How do we continue? What is our plan for Monday? At what time do we start? What's happening? And then for us as instructors, like, we were missing the answers immediately. So for us, a big crisis, a big thing to come up with ideas, to calm them down, to have something in place for Monday, and then to have ideas basically on how we continue, because, well, we all feared that they will lose their jobs, and as well as on our side, what will we do if we don't have students? So it was like a common thing, a great team spirit afterwards, great ideas, great innovation, and made it work, luckily. But yeah, everybody was afraid at first. Turned out well.
We were afraid as well. Any questions from the audience directly to whoever on the panel? You can ask questions to each other, obviously, as well. Otherwise, there is a question in Slido, I see. I don't know, it's anonymous. I just read the question. I have the feeling that there is an elephant in the room while training. Most ANSPs also perform selection. How hard do we encourage people to learn? Question. Any idea?
Can,
Hugo? You have still the microphone.
is it on? Thanks. Yeah, actually, it's a question back. So this is about what I said about a static mindset and growth mindset. So the question is, do we have selection? And then when you have selected people, what do I do to make them learn? Instead of saying, I selected the best people and they will, like, without any effort, be an air traffic controller. So I think it's a question of a training culture where you say, no, we believe in people when they put the effort in, that they will be able to achieve something. And that success is when you put your effort in and you learn and you grow, and then the training organization stimulates it. And the question, we also have a problem at LVNL with it, is that maybe unlike DFS, but then the selection is being mistrusted. Are we selecting the right people? So the selection is giving me, Atco, me, OGTI, a person who I cannot train because he doesn't have the right skills. So there's no sense of a growth mindset in that. And we have some front runners and some pioneers who really have this growth mindset, but it doesn't mean that overall everybody has it. And what I from my organization believe is that it's really good if we like make that corporate culture. Yeah, that the only way looking at success is putting the effort in and training, and believing also in the potential, and that you select on potential, and the potential needs to be developed. I don't know if it's an answer to the question asked on Slido, but this is my thought.
I don't know either, but I think selection has somehow two sides anyway, and I think you touched both of them somehow. One is that we select candidates to follow a training program, which we all know it's long, it's quite high sophisticated, difficult, stressful. But on the other hand, I think things we discuss as well quite often is where the selection stops then. On what process step? Is it done with the selection before starting training, or is the selection done a bit later in the training process somewhere? That's maybe an interesting point as well. What do you think about that? Where should the selection stop? Is it good enough to stop at the end of the selection process before starting the training, or are there some selection steps needed later on as well? Not assessment, selection. Any points from your side or from the podium, from the panel? Andreas, you look like you would like to say something.
Yes, I'm again in my loops, and I think there are many loops that can be closed and should be closed. If you identify something during the training, you will most probably change the recruitment if you identify a trend. So why not doing it as well while being in the training? The other question I have then is, what about the ADCOs that have been selected 20 years ago and are now working? So do we do the same? Most probably not. We have to accept the change, and we have to have these front runners, and we have to have the acceptance and the trust in the new things. So I bounce back the question, can we or should we really do or continue the selection after the selection?
If I may. I agree with everything said. I think to a certain extent it's a matter of semantics. An issue that we certainly have, and I'm sure we're not alone in this, is the matter of attitude, KSA, knowledge, skills, and attitude. And we all put our best foot forward at any selection, any interview, any. And the selection, I think the training, the recruitment people, no matter where they are, they only have X number of days, hours, weeks exposure to the selection. I think we see under stress, especially, whether it's theoretical or in the simulator, the real attitude in terms of Doc 9868 in what KSA is. And semantically, that is, in my opinion, part of the selection. sorry, but you do not possess the right attributes to be a valuable team member. That's part of the selection. That would be better, of course, for cost and or many other reasons to have identified in day 2 of selection camp somewhere, but it doesn't work that way.
Thanks. I think we have Bernd.
Yeah, Bernd from the DFS, and I think, in my opinion, the selection process has to learn. So we are collecting data since 30 years with all successful or unsuccessful students, and every student is kind of analyzed and checked why and when did the failure process start, where did we make the mistake, and then we put these experience into the selection process. So that's a very good process where we regularly adapt the selection process in minor bits and try to keep the high level of success we have in the DFS.
Thank you, Bernd. Hugo?
Yeah, I want to add this example from this football club, and I think it's just interesting to really think from a different angle. They said, this is our ambition to become Dutch champion. And they said, okay, but if we want to become Dutch champion, we need players. We need so many players, and they need to have these skills. And so they can identify statistically what kind of skills do we need. And from that they said, okay, so we need to get people in. We cannot buy them. We don't have money. So we get youngsters in that have the potential to grow to that level. So the idea is that they bring them in, and that's also a very long, I mean, even way longer than air traffic controllers, the time to raise them to these professional footballers. And the only reason to kick somebody out is that he doesn't take certain steps in his development. So it's not that you say you don't have this right level of this first team yet when you're 14, because it doesn't make sense. And also not when you're 16, and maybe not when you're 18 or 21. Because, we understand that you don't have that level of this first team yet, but we believe in your potential, and we want to see a learning curve there. So we want to see growth, and that can be a very personal growth and about a personal learning path, but we want to see you fulfilling your potential. And when people stop fulfilling their potential, then they say, okay, there's no stretch anymore. We cannot move you to that level because that's too much, because you cannot move here. And they try everything on these particular elements to grow them and in this learning path, in coaching, in top sport mentality, whatever. You can just name it all. But the essence is when you do not grow anymore. And the question is that selection good or not good enough? No, the question is, are you still be able to be trained up? That's actually the question you're asking. We have it's mandatory for us as a training organization to believe in people and to develop their potential. And we always have to inquire, can we still train? Do we still know ways to bring somebody further? It's just a different perspective.
Thank you, Hugo. We have another question from Slido. How far encouraging student team working worked while COVID? Question. Can teamwork among students improve the system? So it seems that this team working worked while COVID, and now how can this improve the continuation of it?
Well, teamwork for sure is important also for trainees, whether it is in a COVID environment or in a virtual environment or in a non-virtual environment. There's always teamwork. It's impossible not to have teamwork, and teamwork always has an impact on the environment they are coming to. We see in the badges that every team has its own complete unique identity that they build up themselves, and they bring that identity towards the units afterwards. So of course, every team has its impact on the system for sure. Whether it's virtual or not, that doesn't make big of a difference. It's more difficult in a virtual setup, but I think the need to feel a team is bigger than the boundary set up by the virtual issues.
Good, thanks. Are there any other questions?
can I say something more? Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Well, it's exactly what you say, yeah. But we also had at LVNL something super simple, and that is that operational experts all of a sudden could find teams and were answering their emails. They weren't doing that before, so they were using now the most simple collaborative tools to be more in touch with each other. Yeah? And so interesting is that of course, it is logical that we do teamwork. But maybe now people understand in a better way what it is to do teamwork. And what I've seen is that there's like a culture of more instructor-based training that we maybe are like leaving a little bit. Before it was instructor and trainee, and it's instructor and that's like main thing, and more thinking about more team or more towards flexibility. And we also see it in our training organization with the ambition of the training managers for tower approach and area control, that they really want to grow towards that, they have the ambition to create that culture themselves. And they were not at regional unit, but they believe like, we need that. This is a normal way of collaboration. So I also believe that people got their eyes a little bit opened, as you also described.
Thank you very much. Then I would say thanks to the panelists with an applause. And we will move forward to the demo sessions, actually. You can grab coffee as well in this time. So the demo sessions are just around the corner in the next 2 rooms, I think. We have Elsa, the high-performance lady of ENAC. Overrows. We will see this. We can do in parallel. We will have the remote radar simulation and AT-Speak, I think, the radio telephony training. So go and have a look, try it out, experience yourself how the trainees felt.
Thank you very much. Misha, I would love to draw like you did, and it's fantastic. It's really nice. I believe I cannot summarize everything and find words for everything you've drawn. It's brilliant for the ones in the room. I try to guide you in a couple of minutes through what we did today. Unfortunately, it starts with a ball and spikes. The restrictions we had, and we know the traffic is coming back. We heard something about trust, and Martin has told us about how it works with people who should listen. So leaders need to listen. The medal has 2 sides. We learned from the COVID, from the backside of the medal, some innovations that have been generated or have been invented during that time. The coaching from Charlotte has shown us how severe the impact of COVID was and what it meant for the students and as well for the coaches, how difficult it is to find the coaches. Then we heard about innovations from LVNL and how to break with the rules, or how to make to pave the way for something new, to break with the traditional way of doing things. Something about teamwork and being proud of what you do, and this is as well the basis for new innovations. Finally, the panel discussion led us to a learning path and a discussion about the selection after the selection, which can be continued, I think, and something about still individual learning and the learning path in general. The demo sessions, I would say, speak for themselves. I don't know if we are able to show something more tomorrow then. I would just leave it like this. I think you can say a lot more. Tomorrow we will be able to fill the rest of the drawing. Thank you.
So I think we are at the end of the day one of this seminar. I think we had some small hiccups with the setup. I hope that tomorrow we can start directly with everything working fine. But as I said at the beginning, I really appreciated very much to see people in person again. Quite a lot of you I didn't see for so long time, just virtually, and some new people as well here in this seminar. That's really nice, and I hope that today evening we will find a lot of time as well to have a bit some bilateral discussions and enjoy something nice to eat. If I look outside, the weather did not improve so much, unfortunately, but this is unfortunately not in our hands. So we have to just accept it and live with it. I would like to say thanks to everyone who helped to organize or who organized the event, actually, people here in the background. And then obviously I would like to thank very much the presenters. In my opinion, brilliant presentations, fully at the point of the topics that are really necessary to be brought on the table now. I think we have a lot of inspirations from today. I'm sure that tomorrow we will get some more inspirations when we look a bit further into innovations as well. And then at the end, we have to make it. I think that's then the more difficult part, actually. But that's what we have to do.